There's something that's always sort of bothered me when it comes to the criticisms regarding the prequels. Now, I'm not going to necessarily say that they're perfect movies. That's obviously not really the case, in all honesty. They're good movies, and there are issues with them, but it seems like the vast majority of the commentary on the criticism of the prequels seem to be centered around incoherent nonsense babbling proffered up by the likes of Plinkett. I say that, by the way, with all sincerity and in good faith, because there's no way I could really understand how it is that they make the criticisms that they do. Acting like there is no protagonist in the Phantom Menace is just utter nonsense. I mean, we could go ahead and put Obi-Wan for the side for the moment, and let's say he's not the protagonist. We could also say that, that Jar Jar is obviously not the protagonist. He's a sort of audience stand-in for the kids. So I'm a little bit high at the moment, so I had to blink on that for a second. But point is that we could say it's definitely not those two. We could also say that's not Obi-Wan, because Obi-Wan is simply following Qui-Gon's orders. And the funny thing is that the way in which you actually find out who a protagonist is, and this isn't something that's really seems to be come to mind with Plinkett when he was discussing it at all and describing it, which is very funny because you don't have to follow any of the qualifications for a protagonist to be that. The things that he mentions are not required. The only thing that's required of a protagonist, quite literally, is that he's the individual that not only the story centers upon, but he's also the one, or she is also the one, driving the story along. So, who drives the story along in The Phantom Menace? Well, who's making the decisions that are doing that? That would be Qui-Gon Jinn and Queen Padme Amidala. Okay, and I say that because it's literally after they get to Coruscant, their respective stories continue, but the rest of the movie follows Amidala and her decisions from that point. There are decisions that Qui-Gon is making that are advancing his story, but there are decisions that Padme is making that's, advancing her story. And once the decisions that Qui-Gon makes is that, oh, I'm going to train this kid. Fuck you, council. You can't tell me what to do. My apprentice here, you say I can't have two. Well, guess what? He's ready for the trials. He's ready to become a Jedi Knight. Fuck you. And, well, let's be honest here. That is pretty much where that story kind of ends for the most part. Except, of course, with the Sith sort of looming in the background. Which, by the way, for the record, people, Plinkett and whoever the fuck is parroting him as well, they say that oh, you should have attacked the Queen. Okay, but the Jedi are literally going to stand in his way. So, I mean, he also tells Maul specifically that, oh, I don't know, to kill the Jedi to get to Padme. There's also this weird sense of revenge that he states, finally we will reveal ourselves, Master. At last we will have revenge against the Jedi. So there's clearly a motive of revenge that's there. And I know Plinkett says that he doesn't want to go through the books. I find it very interesting that he's so acting obstinately and curious, like a petulant child almost. But there is an interesting backstory to be had about that. I mean, why the Sith want revenge against the Jedi to begin with at all, under any circumstance, is actually very interesting. In fact, the roots of that are very interesting, and they are very in-depth. And I encourage people to go ahead and check them out. So, in fact, you can go ahead and go to the Old Republic webisodes, if you were. There were a couple of little I call them webisodes because they were actually published on the main site there, and they sort of act as little sort of tidbits there. But it goes through the history of the conflict between the Jedi and the Sith. Very interesting shit. It involves a genocide. Yeah. How's that for being topical, shall we? That all being said here, I think it's important to remember that we're talking about a protagonist here. So, by and large, the decisions of Amidala lead to the freeing of Naboo, and the decisions of Qui-Gon lead to, of course, his respective story. That being the ending of him with his death, and the beginning of the fall of Anakin. I mean, it's pretty well told in all that regard. I don't really have that much of a problem with it. But Plinkett tries to make up problems by pretending that there is no protagonist in the story. Like, and the funny thing is that he does this by pretending that there is no protagonist, because Lucas actually says that in the commentary of the fucking DVD. He's also said that in interviews as well. Like, and I get that some people will say, oh, he's playing off a character. Not every point he's making is meant to actually be taken seriously. The problem is that a lot of them are taken seriously, and a lot of them are delivered with genuine criticism, and the vast majority of people who like consume his shit or like regurgitate criticisms of the prequels just regurgitate his arguments ad nauseum without any introspection whatsoever. Many of these people will obstinately just dig in their heels and not give any inroad whatsoever to any kind of response. You can look at the debate done by Anomaly Inc. and Rick Worley, who were defending the prequels from the various criticisms that Plinkett gives, along with, and they were debating against Rick Worley, and sorry, they weren't debating against Rick Worley, my bad. They were debating against, again, I'm a little bit high, so you can forgive me on this regard, okay? They were debating against PSA Sitch and some other guy, I can't remember. He's very irrelevant for all intents and purposes. I think he did like this weird ass fucking review of the Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire. He says that like it sucks, it's the worst Spider-Man film ever, as well as Spider-Man 2. Yeah, a weirdo, a complete and utter contrarian moron who just wants to make his entire views based on contrarianism rather than it's actually factual. And I think that's the case with most of these people, by the way. When most of them try to engage in like the prequel trilogy criticisms, it seems like they're all calling from the same source, that being Plinkett. And Plinkett's arguments are utter garbage. I mean, anyone who goes through them with a critical eye, critical detail, and an understanding of what the actual material says, it's like just that. And the other thing is that a lot of people will try to say, oh, you shouldn't have to view the DVD commentary in order to be able to criticize the prequels. You shouldn't have to do any amount of research to be able to criticize the prequels. You should just be able to watch the movie and be able to form your opinion about the movie. And most people will say the movies suck because of that. I'm sorry, but the vast majority of the criticisms people will make are about like the in-depth writing, the way in which the story is actually put forth here. What kind of decisions the characters make. And a lot of these decisions are based on, or a lot of these criticism of the decisions of what happens on there is either based on shit that either doesn't happen the way in which they say it does, or for whatever strange reason, they call into question why the director actually did that, and they can't conceive of a reason why he would do that. But it's like, if you can't conceive of a reason why he would do that, and you don't like what was done, but you can't explain it other than I can't think of a reason why he would actually do that. Why are midi-chlorians based upon why are midi-chlorians the Force? Why did George Lucas take the midi-chlorians and take the Force and retcon it to being the midi-chlorians? It's like he didn't do that. For one, he didn't make the midi-chlorians the Force. I mean, if you actually listen to what Qui-Gon actually says about it, he says the symbiotes give us knowledge of the Force. The midi-chlorians being the symbiotes of what I'm talking about here. In fact, midi-chlorians, the reason why he did that was to make a connection to mitochondria. And if you don't know what that is, go ahead and look it up. I'm not going to bother explaining it. But the fact of the matter is that's what he did. And why he did that was to create a sort of sense of science behind how how the Jedi discover Force sensitives. How they induct them into that. It's a bit of world building. And he does it to indicate also that, hey, if anyone knows what is involved in communicating with the Force in such an in-depth manner as detecting things in our blood, it would be the Jedi. It's also to show how the Jedi are not just dogmatic beings who believe in the Force and who conjure up this sort of image of what it is. It's actually saying, hey, we do have a science behind this. It's not just voodoo. It's not just our belief. We're not just calling telekinesis and powers that some people are born with throughout the galaxy as just a thing that just happens. And it's not just a metaphysical force, but it's something that we can somewhat detect in some areas. And that's what the midi-chlorians are about. And to say that you don't know why he did that, while at the same time misrepresenting the midi-chlorians as the Force, when the midi-chlorians are the things that help people in Star Wars to detect and understand and connect with and use the Force to begin with. I'm sorry, but if you're going to actually criticize midi-chlorians and how they operate as was introduced by the Phantom Menace and the way in which it's described, actually fucking describe how they work. Accurately describe how they're being described in the film. Don't make shit up. Don't misrepresent it based on your misunderstanding because you weren't paying the fuck attention. I mean, for all intents and purposes, you can liken midi-chlorians to an analogy to Force IQ. You could just say, hey, some people have a higher Force IQ, aka midi-chlorians, than others, and that's why people are able to tap into the Force, while those who have low Force IQ, they don't get to tap in the Force. Or if you want to put it in a less mean fashion, you could say that IQ, which is what it really is, by the way. I'm not saying people are dumb for the record that they have a low IQ. Because, let's be perfectly honest, IQ will fluctuate throughout your entire life and will fluctuate also based upon environmental stimuli. Let's say, for example, you pick up reading books for quite a few times. Let's say, for example, you pick up the aspect of being able to communicate quite a bit better with how you're doing. Let's say you're writing stories. All of these things, depending on how dedicated you are to your craft and depending upon how you specifically are actually trying to improve and better your own intelligence, you can actually raise your IQ scores. That is a thing that we know about IQ scores, okay? So they're not immutable like the midi-chlorians, but you could say that those with higher or lower amounts of midi-chlorians will have a weak connection to the Force, an instinctual connection, that they may use throughout their entire lives without even knowing that they have a relatively high midi-chlorian count. Midi-chlorian count. And my point being is that you can actually think of ways in which it will work, in a fashion that makes sense within Star Wars, makes sense within the rules that are established. I mean, Anakin is the chosen one because he probably because he was obviously conceived of by the Midi-chlorians, but people with a high Midi-chlorian count, uh, less than Yoda, will not get as strong as Yoda is, but they can get pretty damn strong. But that requires patience, understanding of the Force, or some way in which to tap into it that increases your proficiency. In fact, midi-chlorians only allow for more proficiency use in the Force than anything else. So I'm sorry. What is the problem with midi-chlorians again? Oh, it's because you don't understand them. It's because you can't conceive of what they are, and you misrepresent them as being the Force. You see what I mean when I'm saying that the Plinkett reviews are the garbage, and it's a bunch of incoherent nonsense babbling that makes no fucking sense. And people say these reviews are objective too. Like, I've literally heard people describe them as objective. If you go on the Wikipedia page regarding the Plinkett reviews, there's a filmmaker who, what was it? I can't remember his name. He's basically the director of Kong, is what I'm saying. And King Kong from 2014, yeah, that one. Okay. Basically, the one from the from the latest MonsterVerse. I don't know if it was actually 2014. Again, I'm a little bit high here, but I'm at least more fucking coherent than him, and than Plinkett. And for some reason, Plinkett gets the designation from this director as delivering objectively good points. And for some odd reason, by the way, nowadays, and I'll just leave this at that to express a little bit more of my frustration. The fans of Plinkett are now actually trying to say, oh, you're just taking a satirical series that was never meant to be taken seriously at all whatsoever. You're just a butthurt fan. Like, when did this become a defense? I've heard for over a decade, ever since they fucking started coming out, and ever since I started hearing about them, which was about 2011, 2012, that these were the bestest takedowns of the prequels. That these were these reveal so many problems for the prequels. Okay. I'm sorry, but it's a headache to deal with. Because I really do want to discuss problems with the prequels, but I can't really do that if everyone's just parroting vomit at me. Like what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to go, hey there, I have my problems with the prequels, and then the other person goes, blah, all over me, just vomits all over me, and I'm just sitting here just wiping this shit off my fucking face to just point out what their problem is and what their issue is, and they go blah all over me again. It is annoying to deal with. It is like talking with fucking children for the most part. And I don't get why it is people are like this. Why do people who hate the prequels constantly reference Plinkett stuff? And you know what? There'll be people who will probably say, I've never actually seen any of Plinkett's viewpoints and whatnot. I've never seen his videos at all. Okay, then. Give me your problems with the prequel reviews of Plinkett, and as well as what are your problems with the prequels in general? In fact, do the latter rather than the first one, so that way I can hear your problems, and then we could probably go over Plinkett's videos and see what the issue is. I really do want a dialogue on this. I don't want to just simply complain and bitch and moan about people who have garbage problems with the prequels. They are very prominent. Cosmonaut Variety Hour being one of them, obviously. That guy's fucking annoying as all hell. He has little to no shame, and he has a ton of fucking followers. Where does he get those people? Are most of them hate watchers? And this is the other problem too, and I'll leave it at this. Why are so many of the people who say the same things about the prequels as Plinkett does, that are influenced by him, that look up to him, why are they all a bunch of moronic idiots? And why do these moronic idiots have millions of views? Is it because most intelligent people tend to follow like so many other people, so many other smart individuals here? And like as a result, they're all spread out while these channels like Rick Worley are like have the fraction of the amount of views or the amount of subscribers that Plinkett has? Is it because he's new? Is it because they're newer? Or is it because like dumb people will attract a shit ton of dumb people? Is it that smart people are rare? Is that it? I don't know. I don't know. And I'm not calling myself smart for the record. I'm just saying I'm obviously not a fucking stupid person. And you have to be a stupid fucking person to engage with the Plinkett reviews in a way that makes you admire their arguments or respect their points. So yeah, I'm done.